Today we begin with a tense moment on Capitol Hill, one that cuts straight to the heart of constitutional power, immigration enforcement, and the boundaries of executive authority. If you appreciate reporting that breaks down complex hearings into clear, meaningful insight, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an update.
I now recognize Mr. Gleman for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go back to Mr. Kilmar Abrego-Garcia's case, Madam Secretary. But my first question for you is a pretty simple one. It's basic civics. Which branch of government does the Constitution give the authority to interpret what the law is, the judiciary or the executive branch?
Sir, going forward, the interpretation of the law, you make the laws in this body. The judicial branch makes sure that they have integrity and they're applied properly to individuals.
So I'm just going to take that as the judiciary branch. Now, let's focus for a second on what the judiciary branch has said about this case. We know the Supreme Court has said 9-0 that notwithstanding your statements under oath here today, that Mr. Kilmar Abrego-Garcia was afforded due process, he was in fact not afforded due process, because then if he were, you would have seen the withholding order that did not permit him to be deported to El Salvador. Now you allege, and I guess the Attorney General alleges, that he's a member of MS-13. That may very well be the case. And if he is, now that that is a foreign terrorist organization, certainly the immigration laws would allow him, and in fact require him, to be deported. I certainly would support that. But the problem that we have here is what you allege, what Ms. Green alleges, what the Attorney General alleges, is not the judiciary. You don't get to decide whether or not he is an MS-13 member. And you don't have to take my word for it, because Judge Wilkinson, a Fourth Circuit judge, very conservative, addressed this argument. He said, the government asserts that Abrego-Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, but perhaps not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident in its position, it should be assured that position will prevail in proceedings to terminate the withholding of removal order. Will you commit right now to give Mr. Abrego-Garcia that process where you can prove your allegation that he is a member of MS-13?
Congressman, that judge that you just quoted did not say he was not a member of MS-13. Who did say that he was a member of MS-13 was law enforcement officers that encountered this individual.
Yeah, he knows that. This is a Fourth Circuit judge. He knows all of what the evidence is, and he's saying if that evidence...
So
you're not going to commit to follow this order? You won't commit to follow this court order?
By the way, he identified
Madam Secretary,
himself.
I reclaim my time. Stop filibustering.
He was surrounded by gang members of MS-13.
Will you give Mr. Abrego-Garcia the due process that the Supreme Court and Judge Wilkinson has required you to give him?
Abrego-Garcia is an El Salvador resident who is in his home country. If he were to come back to this country, he would be immediately removed again.
How do you know?
He has received and been treated appropriately,
sir,
and he is not.
How can you say he's been treated appropriately if the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0? 9-0 that he hasn't been treated appropriately? Why is your opinion better and have more authority than the Supreme Court?
Investigators, 2 judges, an immigration court that all said he was MS-13 and was removed from this country.
But you understand, that is you saying that. That is you saying that.
That is them saying that.
No.
Investigators and law
that is
enforcement
you
officers
making that
in the case
determination.
they built against him. If you don't
the
trust our law
court
enforcement
has
officers
considered all that.
and
The judge has considered all that, Madam Secretary.
And
if you would be quiet, because I'm reclaiming my time, you are not following this court order. But let's focus on the court order, because this opinion also says that to facilitate, which the Supreme Court is requiring, is an active verb. It requires that steps be taken. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego-Garcia to allow him to get due process?
Abrego-Garcia is in his home country.
What steps have you taken?
If your continued advocacy for him were to...
I'm not advocating for him.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
advocating for a
Absolutely.
court order, Madam
Gone to the
Secretary.
mat for this
The
man
court order
who has terrorized
says
people
that
in
you
traffic,
must take
human
steps
beings.
to follow the court order. You are here under oath. What steps have you taken to return Mr. Abrego Garcia pursuant to this court order?
It's got to be extremely discouraging to be one of your constituents. To see you fight for a terrorist like this and not fight for them is extremely alarming to me.
I'm fighting for due process, and that's under the Constitution.
The gentleman's
and you
time
should
has
fight too for due
expired.
process.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize...
During a House oversight hearing, Representative Gleman pressed the Homeland Security Secretary on a foundational question that many Americans last encountered in middle school civics. Which branch of government has the constitutional authority to interpret what the law is? The representative's tone made it clear this was not just a trivia question. He was building toward a larger point about executive power. The secretary responded cautiously, acknowledging that Congress creates the laws and that the judiciary ensures those laws are applied properly. Gleman locked in on that answer, taking it as confirmation that the judicial branch, not the executive, is the final interpreter of law. It may seem like an academic exchange, but in Washington, simple questions are often the doorway to far more complicated disputes. Stay with us and subscribe for continuous breakdowns of moments just like this. The real focus of the confrontation was the case of Mr. Kilmaro Garcia, also referred to in court documents as Abrego Garcia. The representative argued that despite the secretary's sworn statement that due process had been followed, the Supreme Court unanimously concluded otherwise. That 9-0 decision, he said, proves that the government failed to recognize a withholding of removal order that legally blocked deportation to El Salvador. This is where the story becomes more than a procedural disagreement. It becomes a question about whether the government followed the rules it demands others obey. If you're finding this helpful, remember to hit subscribe so you can keep learning with us. The Secretary and Attorney General have claimed that Garcia is a member of MS-13, now designated a foreign terrorist organization. If true, the law does not merely allow removal, it compels it. But here's the crucial tension. Accusations from the executive branch, even serious ones, are not the same as judicial findings. That gap is the entire point of the constitutional separation of powers. And this is where the representative brought in the voice of a respected conservative judge, J. Harvey Wilkinson of the Fourth Circuit. Wilkinson wrote that perhaps Garcia is a terrorist, and perhaps he is not, but that even the most troubling allegations do not erase the right to due process. His message was clear. If the government is confident a person is dangerous, then it should have no fear of proving it in a lawful proceeding. This statement underscores a principle many people forget. The measure of a system's fairness is not how it treats the agreeable cases, but how it treats the hard ones. If this kind of deeper context is valuable to you, subscribe to stay informed. The representative ended with a direct challenge. Would the secretary commit to giving Garcia the full legal process that would allow the government to present its evidence, test its claims, and, if those claims hold, remove him lawfully? It was not just a question about one man. It was a question about whether the government respects the limits the Constitution places on its power. And behind that question sits a broader national conversation about safety, fairness, and the rule of law. These hearings, often overshadowed by political noise, are where those values are tested. If you want more reporting that unpacks these conflicts in a clear, human way, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the bigger story behind moments like these.